Bonjour à tous, ici Antonin Cohen, CEO at Harmony, et vous écoutez Professionally Cannabis.
Where do they go, the smoke rings I blow each night? Oh,
Bonjour, listener, and welcome back to the Professionally Cannabis Podcast. And bonjour, Oscar, mon ami. Oscar, tell us, why the French theme for today's episode?
Yes, Jonathan, of course I can explain who we have today, and I will drop out of this accent before someone accuses me of xenophobia or something like that. But today we have Antonin Cohen, the CEO and founder of Harmony, an international CBD business based in Europe that's been going on for yonks. I mean, I think this is really the most impressive part about what Antonin's done. He's been in this game for over 10 years, which is a long time even for someone in North America. But in Europe, it's practically unheard of. Oh, and by in this game, I mean in the legal market. I'm sure people have been in the black market for far longer. But yes, Antonin studied cannabinoids very early on. I think perhaps we go on to talk about it, of course, but I think it was something like 2008. And he's just been rolling with it ever since. Harmony does a lot of good stuff. He has a trade body called Active that Harmony contributes to. And in general, is a very interesting and engaging man in this space who's been here for longer than pretty much anyone we've had on the pod in the commercial sense. So without any further waffle, I think it's probably time to get into it. Let's hear it from the man himself.
where do they go, the smoke rings
It
I
gives me
blow
great
each
pleasure to welcome to the pod Antonin Cohen, founder and CEO of Harmony, a CBD company with a presence in over 40 countries and spanning 3 continents. As an early player in the CBD e-liquid space, Antonin and his team have been innovating for the best part of a decade, and I know from our own experiences, Oscar and I have found their OG Kush flavoured vape pen particularly delicious. Antonin, welcome to Professionally Cannabis.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. I'm very pleased to be with you today.
And so let's lead with our traditional question of what led you to the plant. And I know in your case, Antonin, that this story goes back a fair while, at least to the noughties, right?
So it's at this time in 2008, we set up the non-profit organization because we realized the lack of information in French about medical cannabis. You could see in the news people talking about the illegal usage of cannabis, putting a really bad light on cannabis, where in the US and in English, you had a lot of information about the benefit of medical cannabis, and nobody were talking about that in France. So that's why we decided to create this non-profit organization to start educate the French about medical cannabis. I've set up the website. I wrote probably a couple hundred of articles in French. And then we had a lot of people contacting us, a lot of people using medical cannabis in France, having a lot of issues using medical cannabis because medical cannabis in general is illegal. So if you're a medical user, you take a lot of risk when you want to use cannabis medically. First, you need to find cannabis and it's illegal. So you can be arrested and prosecuted. Then the quality of cannabis is not controlled. So you can use something which is actually not very safe. Then the dosage is not controlled neither. So you don't really know what you're taking and you cannot have a consistency over time. And when you use cannabis for medical purpose, obviously you want to have access to a safe product. Unfortunately, it was not possible at this time and it's still not possible today, even if we are very pleased to see finally a medical cannabis experimentation happening in France 10 years after launching the non-profit organization. So it's been quite a lot of time before to end up to this point, but it was very useful for us to educate authorities, educate the population about it. And we are very pleased to see finally medical cannabis coming in France as well as other places in Europe. On my side, I was doing this non-profit organization as a side project, as an unpaid volunteer. I was working in tech startups, building websites, doing mobile apps. But then when I see so many people contacting us in our trade association, in our non-profit organization, I realized we need to create legal cannabis-based product for them as well. And that's where I started to realize the potential of CBD, which is a compound coming from hemp. The fact that hemp is something you can legally grow in Europe. So back in 2012, I started to grow hemp close to my hometown in Provence. I made a partnership with the farmers, and we had the first harvest of hemp that we cultivated in quite a small area. We had 1,000 meters square. And then we started to experiment with extraction of CBD from hemp, doing everything ourselves, making the first prototype of CBD products back in 2012 to 2013, giving them away to our friends and family. And we had excellent feedback. And that's why I decided finally in 2014 to quit my job in a tech startup. I was working at this time in London to finally launch my first CBD product back in 2014. So it's been quite an adventure, and definitely took some time before to have a CBD market fully functional. It's still not the case today. I have to say the first couple of years selling CBD products was very, very difficult because nobody knew about CBD. It was a compound coming from hemp, coming from cannabis. So a lot of people was pretty skeptical, but I'm very pleased to see finally for the past 2 or 3 years, CBD taking over the world. I was quite surprised as well because when I started launching this first product, I knew it was useful, but I didn't know it was going to be so big. And it's really, really nice to see the new usage that CBD has been able to emulate, particularly in industries like cosmetics or food supplement or vaping. And it really shows the potential of cannabis is much more beyond recreational usage or medical usage, because CBD today, it's mostly usage for wellness and well-being. And we are still at the very beginning of discovering what you can do from all these cannabis compound.
So I think it's a really interesting journey you've taken, almost moving from advocacy to the business world. For our listeners in North America and indeed across the world outside of Europe, would you be able to give a brief overview of how you've seen the European markets and attitudes change towards cannabis and cannabis-derived products in Europe?
Yes, so in terms of cannabis, I think we had definitely a diabolization of this plant for the past 50 years. And it was a diabolization that has been coming from the US initially with the war on drugs for different motivation, which are very interesting to study. And this diabolization really took over the world. And today, it's kind of funny to see that the country that created this diabolization, the US, is actually the country that is now liberating the accessibility of this plant and providing the right approach and the right education around it.
Do you think they're providing the right approach? Just because I might say that the European standards for medicine may be a little bit more rigorous than, say, Canadian or US.
Yes, I think for me, the approach of making cannabis more accessible is the right one globally. After, if you go in more details, the liberalization of cannabis in the US has been done via the medical cannabis programs happening in many different states. And I think that's exactly what's happening today in Europe. Just we are 10 to 20 years late in comparison to the US. After, definitely in the US, you went very excessive in some of the approach they had, because when you call something medical, I think you need to really make sure the usage is very medical and the deliverability method is very medical as well. And calling medical cannabis and finally using this product as a flower and smoking this flower without any information on the dosage you may take, the different cannabinoids in the flower, and then also inhaling the flower that could be eventually mixed with some residues that are not good to inhale. I don't think that's a very good medical approach. So I think it's the approach they had simply because regulations have not been able to create real medical application and medical deliverability system for cannabis. But definitely, I think we could do better and we must do better, just because a lot of people really need this medical usage of cannabis and they don't have today access to the right medical cannabis product and the right method of deliverability. So I think in Europe right now, we have a unique opportunity to look at what happened in the US and Canada, the good things that happen and get inspired from it, the things a bit less positive that we should be careful on. But definitely Europe needs to be inspired from what happened in the US, in Canada, in Israel, to come up with better regulation and make this plant much more accessible in the best possible way to protect the safety of the users, because that's at the end the most important. So when I see the European market in terms of education around cannabis, it's starting from north of Europe and particularly from the UK, which is much more educated about cannabis because I believe they have access to the same type of content than the American people. So you had a lot of media talking about medical cannabis, a lot of scientists publishing reports about it. So UK sharing the same English language has been much more educated faster than the rest of Europe. And then you have a lot of non-profit organizations in France, in Germany, in other countries that have been doing an excellent job in educating more locally. But it's been a bit slow in terms of the education of European users, just because Europe is a very fragmented continent and there are so many different languages. So if you don't have activists on a national level putting resources, putting time, putting money to do this job, nobody is doing it, more or less.
So that brings me to something that I wanted to talk about, which is we've mentioned non-profits and we've mentioned activists, but when it comes to the European market itself, there's not many players like Harmony who have got that cross-border revenue posting, real impact in Europe. Who do you see as your competitors? Who's even similar in the European market? And how is that shifting over time?
We have more and more competitors in the CBD industry, which is great because it means there is a demand. And when we launched in 2014, we were one of the only companies in Europe doing CBD products. And if you have competitors, it means you have clients. It means also more people are educating the market. So it's great to see more and more good competitors, serious companies coming into this market, creating good products, doing some good marketing campaign to educate the consumers and to increase the size of the market. Today, there are a lot of great companies doing CBD products at a national level. So you have great companies in the UK, in Germany, in France, in Spain. You don't really have leaders all over Europe. And I think Harmony is quite unique in this position of being very strong in many European countries. We really developed a pan-European company from scratch, hiring a very international team, doing distribution partnership with local partners and doing marketing in multi-language. So we don't see pan-European competitors yet. We see really good competitors more on a national level. And definitely there are today hundreds and hundreds of companies doing CBD products in Europe or just getting started now. And the market became extremely crowded actually for the past 12 to 18 months. Between the US and Europe, there are literally dozens of CBD companies now. And it's becoming a bit of an issue because most of these companies are competing for a market size which is not growing as fast as the amount of competitors. So you have less market share and you have a lot of saturation on the market. You have a lot of companies also that are launching CBD products which are very similar one to each other. So the value and the differentiation is very, very limited. So I think, and that's what we are seeing right now, the market will see more consolidation with a lot of companies stopping their activities. And I could notice the past few months, actually, a lot of CBD companies going out of business, some new ones launching with better marketing, better positioning, better formulation. And I think the key for CBD companies today in Europe is to think very well about your positioning and the segment you want to approach. And that's really the next stage in the CBD industry, is to segment, to think about what category of clients you want to touch, what type of issues you want to solve, and really build a product that is adapted to this specific segment. Where before you could put CBD in any type of product and it's going to sell because the demand was so big. Now it's not enough. You really need to think about segmentation, positioning, and create a formulation that is very qualitative, not only because of CBD.
When you spoke at the GCI Europe Leaders Summit in November, one of the things you discussed was around how the CBD market is estimated to have produced $22 billion in product sales by 2022. In that, what proportion of those sales do you think will be attributed to current players in the market? And do you think that the traditional FMCG conglomerates will have made a significant move on the market by then?
Yeah, I think a lot of large players today will get most of this market share, but a lot of new ones as well are coming to come in the market. And definitely it's not too late to launch a CBD company, particularly if you have experience in doing FMCG products. It's much more competitive, so you really need to build strong competitive advantage and really build differentiation based on the market and the segment you're in. After, I really think the market is going to continue to grow. However, there are still a lot of regulatory blockers. So to reach this market size by 2022 means we will have a much better regulation that we have today. And unfortunately, authorities are quite slow to come up with regulations that can protect the final users, the safety of the users, as well as the competitivity of companies from the CBD industry. So we are doing a lot of work with our trade association to educate authorities about the urgency of creating good regulations. But for now, it's been a bit slow. So hopefully we can have better laws which enable us to have this type of market size in just a couple of years now. And in terms of the largest FMCG companies, for example, the food and drink industry or the cosmetic industry, they are all looking at doing CBD products or cannabis-based products because they know it's going to become a very large market for them and also a competition, particularly for alcohol companies. However, they are very cautious right now because it's very complex on a regulatory point of view. So a lot of times these large companies, when they do a product, they want to make a product that's going to be distributed all over the world. Where with CBD products and cannabis-based products, because of compliance, you cannot really make a product that's going to sell everywhere in the world. You are going to maybe adapt your formulation based on the local regulations. You're going to need to have special licensing, or you just have a lack of clarity on the compliance of this type of products in many, many countries. And then you have a problem of image as well, because even if us as cannabis experts, we love this plant and we don't have any cliche about it, you still have a major party of the population that has cliche and stigmas against cannabis. So for very large companies, a very mainstream FMCG company to get into cannabis right now, it's also a small risk in terms of image for their more traditional customers. So because of compliance and because of image, you don't see yet some very large FMCG companies into the cannabis industry, but they are definitely working on it and starting for some of them to work on CBD products, and they are going to come in the market, but it's still a bit soon for them. And that's where, as a new company, as a startup, there is a big opportunity to create CBD products that can compete with more established companies. For example, in the cosmetic industry, CBD, it's a super compound. Some cosmetic experts explain that CBD is the biggest innovation which happened in the cosmetic industry for the past 20 years. So as a small company, you have the ability to use CBD in your formulation much more easily and then put in the market cream that could be more efficient than the most famous cream and most sold creams today. So that's a very big opportunity for new companies, and some of them will probably do some great exit in a couple of years when some largest FMCG companies are looking to come into the market and are looking to buy.
What do you see as the medium to long-term trajectory for Harmony? So it seems like there you've just outlaid quite a clear path to create and harmonize products in a market ready for a larger strategic to buy you up. I sense from the way you talk that you're very interested in medical, perhaps more so than FMCG, so perhaps you'd want to be into the pharmaceutical side of things. How do you see Harmony moving over the medium to long term? And I won't hold you to it if we talk again in 5 years and it's not true.
No, because for me, I'm very pragmatic in terms of my business decisions. I try to explore all options possible and take the best one on the moment. So if something is changing in a year, I'm really happy to change my mind as well and iterate very quickly. So it's great to have plans, but it's even more important to adjust your plans based on the reality of the market. And I think that's what makes a very successful company is when you're able to adapt yourself very quickly and take decisive actions to make sure you can take on the opportunities and solve the challenge you have in front of you. So with Harmony, I'm right now focusing on creating FMCG products for the wellness industry. Our goal, our long-term mission is to help people to live with more harmony in their mind, in their body.
Nice.
So everything related to this long-term mission is good for us. And today we think CBD products are great to help people to live with more harmony in their life based on some of the issues they might have. So for example, our CBD vape products are a great tool for smokers. Our CBD cosmetic line that is going to be released in April is also very, very useful for the skin. So we are also developing more and more marketing content around wellness and well-being to help our users to improve their daily habits. It's not just about taking CBD products. It's also about improving the way you live on a daily basis, maybe do some meditation to sleep better, maybe do some yoga, nutrition, dietetic. All of this is part of our mission to help our users to find more harmony in their life. So that's why we present Harmony as a wellness company, and we use CBD as a key ingredient in our products, but that's not our finality. That's the step one. The step two is to launch more medical cannabis products. And what's very interesting in medical cannabis is the creation of a framework, which is totally different from medical products today. Today, when you do a medical product, you need to do a clinical trial. That's going to take years and tens of millions of euros. However, when you look at the implementation of the medical cannabis program by authorities, you don't need to go via clinical trial. And that's very a unique opportunity to create medical cannabis products that can help for medical purpose without going via the clinical trials that are extremely expensive. And so you can put on the market medical cannabis products at a much lower cost and give access to final users a product that is very useful for their medical problem at a much lower price. So for me, I see as well a very important opportunity of disrupting medical industry with cannabis, with providing products that are going to be very efficient and much more affordable than the chemical drugs you have today on the market that needs to go via clinical trial. So that's where we want to be in a step two, to create this type of natural medical cannabis product under this new framework of medical cannabis programs that is being implemented in the UK, in France, in Germany, without the need of investing tens of millions in clinical trials. And I think that's a massive opportunity to disrupt the pharmaceutical industry. So that's where we see in terms of products development. And then on a more financial point of view, as any company, as any entrepreneur, I think our dream is always to do an IPO and be on the public market at some point and live by yourself, Harmony as an independent company. And that's not something we are really looking at right now because we are still too small and we are more looking at private investments right now. But as a second step, we'll maybe go on the public market if it makes sense for us, but we will be also open to an exit to a large FMCG company if we think that's the only way to achieve our mission and continue to grow. But I think every entrepreneur dreams of staying independent and have Harmony as a standalone company, but we'll be also open to explore options of being acquired by some FMCG companies. And I think that's what's exciting is to keep open all of these options and just decide based on the reality of the market at the time when it's needed.
Now, moving on to a slightly different tack. It's no secret that last year, 2019, at the back end of the year, in the media, that vaping got quite a bad rap. As a business, how do you separate what Harmony are doing from potential bad actors? And practically speaking, how did you guys go about ensuring that you wouldn't be tarnished with the same brush as some of those bad actors where these stories were all coming out from?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's very difficult to be safe from this type of issues because today with the medias, everything is very polarized. So as soon as you have something bad happening somewhere, there is really a lot of press talking about it, and it's very emotional instead of being more pragmatic and scientific approach. So in the US, you had some dramatic case of people vaping some very dangerous liquids and dying from it, and that's really, really bad. And when we look at the type of ingredients they were vaping, it was obvious for us that it's dangerous. And we've been talking with our scientific team because for us, quality control has been always the key. And that's why we make this type of products to bring more quality control to our users and to the industry. So in our team, we have, for example, 2 PhD chemists that are creating the formulation and taking care of our quality control. And it's been extremely important for us to make sure all the ingredients we use in our products are totally safe, and particularly in vaping, because when you inhale something, it's going in your lungs, and it's very important to know what you inhale. And when you inhale any type of oils, for example, it's going to be bad for you. So we've been extremely careful to make sure we select the ingredients that are the safest to be inhaled. And when we look at the market in general, we see a lot of products that don't have the same seriousness in selection of ingredients or the same knowledge, and then they put on the market some dangerous products. In the US, it was mostly illegal products having a very, very dangerous effect on many people. But even in the legal industry, still today, you can find some CBD or cannabis e-liquids which contain some type of oils which are bad to vape. And it's a bit a shame, but without good regulations, we cannot do much about it except educating the market, educating clients, educating authorities, so we can create good regulation that puts quality standards that companies must respect. And that's all the work we are doing with our trade association that we created a couple of years ago to really provide the right information to authorities, because the lack of regulation really creates more risk for final users, because companies are putting on the market unregulated products which don't respect all the time the basic quality standards. So on our side is really education to protect ourselves from the users, explaining exactly also the safety of our products, making sure we are running a lot of independent analysis to show that our products are safe, and communicate a lot around quality control. That's really the most important for us.
Well, that sounds very important. So is your trade organization speaking to the authorities in France right now? Are you going to be impacting the experiment that's meant to run in the last quarter of this year?
Yes, actually, we are involved and the co-founder of several trade associations in Europe, particularly one in France, that have been doing an excellent job of getting together quite a large amount of members of the parliament. So they've created a commission at the parliament to discuss and work on the different
What's the name
usage
of this
cannabis.
association, if any of our listeners are interested in joining?
Is this active?
So we have active on a more European level, and then in France we have the Syndicat du Chanvre, which is particularly involved with medical cannabis and hemp for wellness. So this trade association have been organizing many meetings with members of parliament, with authorities, creating white paper as well in French in order to educate authorities and politicians. And today we are very pleased that a new commission has been created at the parliament to talk about the different usage of cannabis, medical usage, wellness, recreational usage. And then for the experimentation, as a medical cannabis experimentation, it's something that has been managed by the French health minister, that has been pushed by many non-profit organizations in France. So it's really a collective work on many non-profit organizations like the UFCM or Normal. Myself, I've been meeting many times authorities in France, and we have a very good relationship with the authorities. They are sometimes a bit uneducated about this topic because it's a very complex topic. They are also very busy with a lot of complex things to manage on their side. So our job is really to provide the best information they need so they can work on this topic and take a very good approach to the issue and move on with good regulation. So we are very pleased to see it's moving on in France. After, it's really a marathon, and it's going to take a lot of years before we really have a full access to these plants for the users.
Well, I think that sums it up nicely. It is a bit of a marathon. Antonin, thank you for joining us today. You've been a wonderful guest, and we look forward to hearing more about the French. I guess we'll have to get you on for the next season once there's actually medical cannabis in French patients' hands.
Thank you so much for your invitation. It was really nice talking with you today.
Where do they go? The smoke rings I blow each night.
We hope you enjoyed our chat with Antonin, and if you did, and if not already, please do feel free to subscribe, like, share, and leave a nice review. Anyway, looking forward to next week's episode. We have a deep dive into federally legal cannabis in the United States. But until then, au revoir.
Love, please take me above, take me with you.